Okay, Mitchell, thank you very much for being here with me. It's a huge pleasure to have you here talking about education, and it's also my passion, education. So I'm a hidden journalist, and an educator, like a lifelong thing. So first of all, for those who don't know you, and I hope a lot of people watch this interview here, who is Mitchel Resnick?
And so I'm a professor at the MIT Media Lab in Cambridge in the United States. And I lead a group called the Lifelong Kindergarten Research Group, where our focus is on developing new technologies and new activities to engage children in creative learning experiences.
I know it's much more than that, okay? But anyway, you wear many hats, right? I know that. So is there any special prerequisite to be such a guy like you? You were a journalist, and I read about you, and you did many different things, and all related with passion and the things you believe, I think. So is there any prerequisite to be like you? Anything special about it?
Well, I mean,
How
when I think about
how many hours do you sleep? Anything like that?
Well, I really haven't, dedicated my life to the goal of trying to empower children all over the world to develop as creative thinkers, because I think there's nothing more important in today's society than the ability to think and act creatively. We live in a world that's changing more rapidly than ever before. So it's hard to know exactly what types of new situations and challenges today's children will face as they grow up. So the most important thing for children to learn is how to develop creative and innovative solutions to the new and unexpected situations which they certainly will confront in the future. So in our work, we're always trying to figure out how can we create new types of technologies, activities, and places to help children grow up as creative thinkers so that they're prepared to be full and active contributors to tomorrow's society.
You are one of the greatest world experts in education technology. How did this happen? Love at first sight, or just a consequence of what you do?
Well, I think it builds up on it. I feel very fortunate to have found an area of work that connects to many of my interests. I really feel very fortunate about that. I think an important turning point in my life came when I met Professor Seymour Papert, who was a professor at MIT, who was one of the early pioneers of technology and learning. When I met Seymour, I was working as a journalist, and I went to hear him talk, and I was really inspired by his vision about technology and learning. And it wasn't so much that I was inspired by the specific technology, but more about Seymour's vision of how technologies could enable children to express themselves in new ways, to think about themselves in new ways, to understand the world in new ways. And that ability, that opportunity to provide children with the tools and activities to allow them to live up to their full potential was really very appealing to me. So I think it connected somewhat to my background as a journalist. I think I went into journalism because I wanted to help people understand things in the world. And that was one of the things I was doing as a journalist. But I think education for me was another pathway for making that happen. And Seymour's approach seemed like a very humanistic approach. It really valued each individual and tried to help support every individual to find their own path to living out their full potential. Actually, there's a connection with Brazil. I'll mention a connection to Brazil. One of the stories that Seymour would often tell, and he wrote about in his landmark book, Mindstorms, he talked about spending time in samba schools in Brazil. And he was very inspired by samba schools because unlike traditional schools, he saw samba schools as a place where people from many different backgrounds of different ages all came together and worked together on a collaborative project, preparing the different, costumes and dances for Carnival.
It's true.
And
it's a very sophisticated parade, and the kids who work there and all people, they're very simple, very poor sometimes, and they work together. Yeah, it's true.
so I think Seymour saw that as a point of inspiration of how all learning should take place, of being able to connect with other people in your community, work together on projects, and learn by working together with others on things that you care about. So that really influenced Seymour. And in turn, it also influenced me. And I think in many ways, like one of our projects, the Scratch programming language and online community, million children from around the world were constantly sharing projects and working together. In some ways, I think we see the Scratch online community is a little bit like a Samba school online, where children come together and work on projects they care about in collaboration with others.
And they have fun. I have some students who are using Scratch in the classroom, and they love it. So I think the most important thing, it's meaningful because it's fun for them. So it's a lot interesting. Technology in the classrooms, only a matter of money or funding, or there's still resistance and bias of teachers and pedagogical staff? What do you think? I'm sure this is not a big problem in the United States, but it is in Brazil, for example.
Well, for me, the biggest issue is not about just the access to the technology, but more about how it is that it's used. Because there's a lot of technology that's going into the classroom that I feel is not doing a very productive, is not playing a very productive role in children's learning. Too often, technology enters the classroom by just fitting into the existing educational approaches. For many years, education has been organized by having a teacher delivering information to children. And too often, computers come into the classroom and the computer delivers information to children, or delivers instructions.
The teacher's role? Yeah, what's the teacher's role nowadays? I think many of them don't know exactly what they're supposed to do.
In my mind, it should not be the role of the teacher or the technology to deliver instruction or deliver information. It should be the teacher's role is to support students in learning by experimenting, exploring, and expressing themselves. We want to make sure that children are like in charge of the learning, where they get to work on projects that they care about. But the teacher needs to guide them, to help them make connections to important ideas related to the things they're working on, to help them learn how to persist even when things get frustrating, to help them connect with other people who might help them in what they're doing. So teachers can serve as a role of connecting people and providing consulting work to help people understand things, to encourage children to reflect upon their experiences. So I see teachers are guides to help children in their explorations of new ideas.
Yeah, I used to say that teachers don't teach how to fish anymore. They teach how to choose the right fishes, right? Because the kids learn how to fish from Google sometimes, or from many other tools, apps. I don't know. So I think the role changes a lot, right?
Yeah, it's certainly not just about providing information. There's plenty of information out there. But again, if we really believe that, as I do, that the most important thing is to help children develop a love of learning and to develop as creative thinkers, then teachers need to play a role of helping children develop that love of learning and to develop their abilities as creative thinkers. Some of it is teachers need to be role models as learners. That many years ago, if someone wanted to become a carpenter, they became an apprentice to a carpenter. If we want children to become good learners, they need to be an apprentice to good learners. So teachers should be good learners. They should always be learning new things, and children should see the excitement of learning new things and to see the strategies of learning new things. So teachers can share their expertise in the strategy of how to experiment and explore new ideas.
Yeah, that's it. Talking about creative learning, Is it your expression, I think, is it the grandson of constructivism? How would you think of how to make or to keep humans creative in front of a screen like 100% of the time? How, I think this is your thing, right?
Well, I don't think anyone should be doing anything for 100% of the time. So I think computers can play a valuable role in learning if we use them the right way. But I wouldn't want children spending 100% of their time in front of a book, or 100% of their time playing football, or 100% of their time playing the violin. You know, I think there are many different things that children can do to learn new things and to develop as creative thinkers. I think
no, I know.
in
I'm
our
sorry.
approach.
Okay, I'm sorry. I meant adults. I meant people who spend their days in front of the screen. Like, do they lose some time creativity? I don't know how to keep them creative in front of a screen.
To me, again, I don't think the big issue is the screen or not. It's the type of activities.
Yeah,
there's some activities on the screen that do not help you develop as a creative thinker. If you're just spending time on the screen, pointing and clicking and browsing and playing games and chatting, that's not going to help you develop as a creative thinker. But if you're in front of the screen and you're creating something, you're writing a new screenplay, or developing a new animation, or composing a new song, you can do those things on the screen also, and those are very creative endeavors that can help you develop this creativity. So it all depends on what you do with it. I don't think we should focus on what medium people are using, but more what they're working on. Too often, parents, they might put a limit on, screen time, and they want to minimize screen time. I think what's more important is to maximize creative time. Some people be creative by building Lego sculptures with Lego bricks, or making origami folding, creations. But some people will be making animations on the computer screen. All of those can be creative endeavors. So I think what we should focus on is how can we help children, engage in creative, interactions. We sometimes focus when we want to think about how to support creative learning experiences. I talk about focusing on what I call the 4 P's of creative learning. 4 words that begin with the letter P in English: projects, passion, peers, and play. We see that the most creative learning happens is when people are working on projects that they're passionate about, in collaboration with peers, their friends, in a playful spirit where they're constantly experimenting and trying new things. So rather than just having children trying to solve a problem you give them, or to memorize some information, or to learn some technique, what's most important is for them to work on projects that they care about, and learn through working on those projects that they care about in collaboration with others in a playful spirit.
Speaking of creativity and speaking of Scratch, it's been 10 years, right, in the market, and more than 20 million registered users now. Did you see this coming?
Well, we certainly hoped that it would, that it would be appealing to children around the world, and we feel very happy and very gratified that children around the world, have come to Scratch and are actively participating in Scratch. And again, I think Scratch is succeeding because it's aligned with those 4 Ps. Children really get to work on things they care about, they're passionate about. And when we launched Scratch 10 years ago, it was not just a programming language, but also an online community. We knew the social side of learning was very important. So on Scratch, children can share their projects, get feedback from others, give feedback to others, be inspired by projects that other people create. So I think all of those things have helped contribute to the success of Scratch. We continue to be surprised and delighted by all the creative ways that children use Scratch. I think for us, one of the indicators that shows that it is a success is that children continue to do things that we never anticipated, that we never expected.
And that's the good side of education, the good side of dealing with children. Yes. Scratch is free, right? How do you guys maintain all the infrastructure, operational routines, and research? How does it happen?
Well, actually, we've been so we want to keep Scratch free because we want to make it accessible to everybody, for children from all backgrounds. We've been very fortunate that we've gotten support from various foundations and companies and individuals who want to support the work that we're doing. For example, in Brazil, the Lemon Foundation, which supports lots of educational initiatives, they've been a very strong supporter of our work on creative learning in general and Scratch in particular. And then here in the United States, we get funding from the National Science Foundation. We get money, we get great support from the Lego Foundation in Denmark. And from some individuals who really believe in what we're doing have also been strong supporters. And certain companies like Google has been a strong supporter, and we work together on different projects. So we have always been saying how we can work together with foundations and companies and individuals to make sure that Scratch remains free and available to all children from all backgrounds around the world. So Scratch 3.0 will be coming out sometime next year. And some of the new things that'll be happening, it will be much more designed for mobile devices. It's like right now, you generally can't use Scratch on your tablets, and you can't see Scratch projects on your phone most of the time. But we're redoing Scratch to make it work much better on mobile devices. We're also focusing on Scratch 3.0 to connect Scratch and to make more connections, connected to the physical world and to the online world. So you'll be able to use Scratch to get information from sensors or to control robots, and to connect with web services like speech recognition or speech synthesis. Wow. So Scratch will become sort of a hub connecting to many different things in the world, both in the physical world and the online world.
Well, I visited the Clubhouse network and I fell in love with the project, as Gail knows, and I told you. So I believe that, I so believe that the only possible future is through TSOs, third sector organizations, through empathy and collaboration. You mentioned this before. How do you feel being one of the mentors of such a powerful transformation tool like the Clubhouse? For the ones who don't know, you can explain in a few words what it is.
So actually, the Clubhouse got started almost 25 years ago. We started the very first computer Clubhouse. And back then, we were developing some of our new technologies. Back then, we were starting to work on some of the first Lego robotics kits out at a museum. And during one of the vacation weeks, we took it in the museum, and children came at the museum and tried out our technology. But the next week, we brought the technology back to MIT. And the director of education at the museum, Natalie Rusk, she gave me a call and she said, kids keep coming back to the museum after school and asking, how can they continue to do the programmable Lego? And she talked to the kids, and many of these kids, they were coming from economically low-income communities. Many of them were having trouble in school, but they wanted to keep coming back to work on these creative learning projects that we saw was going to be a great opportunity for them to learn, and they were really excited about it. So we were really frustrated that there was no place for them to go, because the museum mostly had exhibits that you could just go and spend 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there. The museum was not set up for kids to come and work on projects day after day. So we saw there was a real need for a place like that. So that's what led us to start the first computer Clubhouse. And from the beginning, it was not just a room full of computers. There were already some community centers that had computers, but kids were just using the computers maybe to take a course in word processing or to play games. But there was no place for kids to come and use new technology in creative ways. So that was the goal of the Clubhouse, to provide opportunities for all kids to have a place to come where they could learn to express themselves creatively with new technology, and to get support from adult mentors who could help them learn how to both use the technology, but maybe even more important, to learn how to think creatively and express themselves creatively. So that first Clubhouse here in Boston was a real success. And then we started a few more in Boston. And then we were very fortunate, with support from the Intel Foundation, we were able to expand the Clubhouse network to become like about 100 clubhouses around the world, in 20 different countries. So it's been very exciting to us to see how the Clubhouse spaces have expanded. to provide these new opportunities for thousands and thousands of kids around the world to be able to come work together with other kids to learn to do creative activities with new technologies.
You have a project, you have a concept, lifelong kindergarten. It's simple and revolutionary. Do you think that following it will prepare children better for the future workplace?
Yeah, I do think the kindergarten was invented like 200 years ago. But I think that little did they know then that the structure of kindergarten, I think, is ideally suited to the needs of the 21st century. Before the first kindergarten was invented, schools were mostly just about teachers lecturing to students. And when Friedrich Froebel started the first kindergarten in Germany, he realized he needed to do something different. So he set up a place where children could learn by building things and creating things in collaboration with one another. And that worked really well for young children. But now we're saying it's not just for young children. That same approach is what's really needed. Children might start that way in kindergarten, but then they grow up into classrooms where they're filling out worksheets and listening to lectures. So we want to take the kindergarten approach and expand it to learners of all ages, because we think that approach of children learning by experimenting, exploring, and expressing themselves is the best way for children to become prepared for life in today's society.
Good. I'm just curious, what are the grossest mistakes schools make today when teaching children? Do you have any in mind?
Well, I think
I know there are exceptions.
Right. But I think too often, it's really the basic, I think there are problems both with the goals of education and the approaches of education. I think not enough schools have as a goal to help children become creative thinkers and independent learners. So I think schools often don't have the right goals. And then a lot of times they don't have the right approaches. They spend their time thinking about how can we best deliver information to children, to help children learn specific information, rather than providing children with the tools and activities to let them experiment and explore and express themselves. So I think we really need to change both the goals and the approaches of education.
Yeah, it's true. Well, you come to Brazil for the Scratch Conference in October, right?
Yes, I'm looking forward to being there. So in early October, I'll be
just only São Paulo, or are you going to visit Rio?
I'm afraid on this visit only to São Paulo. So I hope to come to Rio another time.
Yeah. Well, what do you expect from this event, and what potential do you see in the Brazilian educational market?
Yeah. Well, I think we're really excited to see Scratch spread around the world, in Brazil and in many other countries. We want to make sure that as new technologies like Scratch spread, that people have an idea of how to best make use of it. Because as I said before, it's not just about the technology, but I want to help people understand and to share ideas about how to use Scratch to create projects, to help children create projects based on passions and collaboration with one another in a playful spirit. So I want to try to help provide to help support a community in Brazil that's already growing, that's thinking about creative learning experiences. We've been very fortunate to have ongoing networking with various educators in Brazil. They're doing incredibly creative work. So we've helped to start a creative learning network in Brazil. I'll be really looking forward to seeing some of those educators who are part of the creative learning network, where they're sharing ideas with one another of how to develop creative learning experiences, both in school and also outside of school.
Brazil is riding backwards on the rail of progress, I think, in my opinion, and no effective plan or desire for quality education, no investments on universities or researchers. It's a real disaster. Do you believe something not from the government, but from outside can be done here? Is there another way? What advice would you give to researchers in Brazil, to scientists, to people like, the obvious advice would be, hey, leave and come to my country. But if they decide to stay here, what can they do?
I think what's important,
it's very hard. Look for investment, should they look for funding overseas, I don't know.
I think it's
I'd like
important
a
to take
hope,
the long-term
a word of
view.
hope.
It's important to take the long-term view, that to really make sure that the children in today's Brazil, get the support they need to grow up as creative thinkers, so that when they become adults and the leaders of tomorrow, that they'll be able to bring a new spirit and a new approach. So I think we have to just focus on the long term, to focus on learning and education, because that's the way to bring about true change.
Yeah. So that's it. What advice would you give to yourself at the age of 30? If you could look back in time and say something to yourself, what would you say to you?
Well, again, I feel very fortunate that the age of 30 is when I sort of started on this journey. In my 20s, I was wandering a little bit, not sure what to do and what to focus on. And right about a little before I turned 30, I sort of found something I was deeply passionate about. So I feel very fortunate to have done that. So I hope other people can also find things they're passionate about. It's now lasted me the next 30 years. The past 30 years have been wonderful because I've just been continuing to sort of follow that vision and to try to help support other people around the world developing as creative thinkers. So I feel very fortunate to do that. And I hope I get a chance to do it for another 30 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your words. I run a school for children here in Brazil. Gail knows that. And it's called WOW, WOWL. And they study English. They start English at the age of 2 with us. And now they are learning, they are in touch with Scratch on Fridays, every Friday. And they are learning a lot. And I'd like, if possible, if you can leave a message for them, for our children, especially for our teachers.
Well, to the teachers and for the children at the school, I think, always be, looking for new ways to experiment, to try new things, to take risks, to test the boundaries. So continue with your playful spirit to experiment, explore, try new things. I think that's the way that you'll be able to continue to develop as a creative thinker and be able to make the most important contributions for yourself and for the community around you. With Scratch in particular, I hope everyone keeps on scratching and share your projects, because we'd love to see what people around the world are creating with Scratch.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.